David. And first, I would like to thank everybody for this wonderful opportunity to speak about my research and for this award. I'm very grateful and very honored to have received the prize. And I will now share my presentation. So I am an oboe player and a musicologist. I write my thesis at the Sorbonne in Paris, and I am currently the holder of the MUSEM Méditerranée Chair at the IMERA Institute for Advanced Studies in Aix-Marseille, where I work more specifically about reed cane in the Mediterranean region. So since about 10 years, I have been working in collaboration with instrument makers on the process of making copies of 17th and 18th century oboes for the Musée de la Musique Philharmonie de Paris and the Centre de Musique Baroque in Versailles. And for my thesis, I'm really focusing on the historical double reed making for wind instruments under the direction of Achille Davirigo with Thierry Maniguet from the laboratory of the Musée de la Musique as co-tutor. Oh, yes. So I base my own method because I make the reeds first in order to play historical oboes, not only to study the making itself. I base my method on historical written sources and also material sources, all kind of like reed making tools, reeds, and anything I can find that gives me indication how they were made. And I have been doing ethnomusicological field studies in Armenia for the past 2 years about Armenian oboes, duduk and zurna, and the reed making for duduk. And now it's part of my work in Marseille. I carry on field studies in the Mediterranean regions about all the double reed instruments tradition, especially oboe and bagpipes, and reed making for those instruments. So when I speak about historical double reed making, I mean first and foremost the historical methods for cane harvesting and the way musicians or reed makers used to dry their cane. The gauging process, which means I'm not using machines, but I am working with replicas, with copies of historical gaugers. Then the making of the reed itself, the adaptation of the finished reed to historical oboes. This allow me to use historical fingerings and to work on articulation, sound quality, and expression in order to play the repertoire. Why did I start to focus so much about historical reed making? It's because I have been a professional Baroque oboe player. I've studied with Hans-Peter Westermann in Bremen in Germany. You might know him. He's the solo oboe player from Concertus Musicus in Wien. And though he plays very flexible reeds compared to other colleagues, and it's also what I used to do, still when I wanted about 13 years ago to play the Mozart oboe quartet, it was impossible for me to play my copy of a classical oboe with original fingerings. They are written in old treaties, and my reeds were too difficult to play, to render the articulation, the very precise and light articulation required to play Mozart, and the dynamics. So that's and also I knew from all kind of historical sources that the oboe, like in this quote from Bannister from the end of the 17th century, was known to be very, very flexible in dynamics and articulation. It was also known as the eloquent oboe from the quote from Matheson, and but also people used to praise the ability of oboe players to play from pianissimo to fortissimo. And Bannister wrote, for besides its inimitable charming sweetness of sound, when well played upon, it is also majestical and stately, and not much inferior to the trumpet. With a good reed, it goes as easy and as soft as a flute. So this is exactly what I'm looking for. I want a reed that goes as easy and as soft as a flute in order to play with this great flexibility. That's how I enrolled for a master in musicology in 2018, and I wrote it on about the method, oboe method from Garnier, and this is for this work that I've been awarded the IGEB prize. This method is very interesting because the oboe player gives exact measurements of the oboe he's playing, and it tells us it's from Christophe Delus. And thankfully, in the museum in Paris, we have two oboes from Delus that have exactly the same measurements. So I could, by making, together with instrument makers, a facsimile of those instruments, study and apply what was written in the method. We are lucky enough also to have drilling tools from Christophe Delus himself in the museum in Paris, which those tools were used by the instrument makers, copies of the tools to make the bore. Here you see the reed making tools of Garnier and also the reed he was using. So I was able to work very thoroughly on the reed making process. You might know that since the beginning of the 20th century, we have shifted from hand gauger to machines. So the first thing I had to do was to, for my reed making, work on reconstructing the tools. I worked with a silversmith in Cologne. And this allowed me to have also to connect with old gestures and also have myself a lot of flexibility working by hand to discover all kind of aspects of cane quality that I could not have noticed using machine. In Armenia, I've also worked with jewelry maker, and so those are the tools I'm using now. Now I'm really focusing on the cane itself, because the quality of the reed depends on the quality of the cane. The cane we buy today is selected and harvested and dried completely differently than it used to be in the past. So the question I ask myself is how to properly cut, dry, and store the cane to get the optimal vibrational characteristics. It's not only a matter of being historical, it's also a matter of having really good quality cane for double reed making. So just to remind you how cane looks like in its natural environment. So we have historical written sources, and also I like to cross the historical sources with traditional methods. So the first methods I learned about were in the south of France and then in Armenia, and now I carry on in the Mediterranean region. I will give you only one quote about this topic from Jean-Xavier Lefebvre. His clarinet method from 1802, exactly same time as Garnier. Lefebvre, as a clarinetist, writes, "The difficulty of having a good reed comes from the fact that it is rare to find good cane. They are cut either too green or too dry. Green, they are spongy and make the sound dull. dry, they lack sap to provide the necessary vibrations. So one should not choose a cane that is too green or too dry, nor of too coarse or too fine a grain. And this is very important. It means that the quality, the good cane, is not good cane in itself. It's cane is good when you select it well and at the right time of maturity, stage of maturity. To give you a short idea about modern practice, in France now, the cane is cut during the winter when the plant is in vegetative rest with those big tools. And it's common practice to say that cane should be harvested in winter, and that sap in the cane stalk, I quote, when the sap in the cane stalk return to the portion of the plants in the ground. When harvested too early, the sap remains and the cane stalks take on a greenish color, which no amount of drying or soaking can eliminate. Reeds made with this cane are never satisfactory, writes John Reid in an article from 1983. And this is completely contradictory with what you can read in old treaties. So this is the way cane looks in the winter. And nowadays also cane is being sun-dried during the summer. From June to mid-August, the stems, also called sticks, are exposed to the sun around their entire circumference for final drying to obtain a golden color, which means that you might know it's very hot in the south of France, and the cane is nearly burnt. It's really dry after being dried in the summer. This is the way it's being sun-dried. I have done research to understand why did our ancestors from the 18th and 19th century preferred green cane harvested in the fall. I don't give you all the quotes, but this is what they write. It should be harvested before the frost in the fall, and full of sap and very flexible. And my answer at this stage of my research, it's because of industrialization of reed making in the 1930s. And in this brochure from Ernest Pichard, who was clarinetist, he says that his cane is better than the one people used to buy before because it's extra dry. So he says that if the cane quality was not good until now for you, it's because dans toutes les marques que vous avez essayé, vous avez toujours trouvé des anges faites avec dont le séchage a été obtenu artificiellement. So it tells us that before the 1930s, people were using green cane. And it says, renoncez à ces anges qui ne durent pas, nuisent à votre sonorité, à votre réputation. Les anges Ernest Pichard sont faites avec du roseau extra sec. Voilà. So from the 1930s onwards, musicians have been driven and looking for extra dry cane. And if you think about the fact that a reed should vibrate, it's a little bit strange to want to have extra dry cane to obtain a good vibration. And what is also strange is that to prove that his idea is good, Pichard writes that at the end of this passage, tels les violons anciens des grands maîtres faits de vieux bois précieux, les anges ont véritablement une âme. And you might know that if we compare reeds to something like from string instruments, it will be to the string itself, because the string is made to vibrate as the reed. And an oboe you can compare with violin, and then it's very good to have old and dry wood to make an oboe, but not for a reed. Exactly the same. A violin made with old woods is important, but the string should be made with very fresh gut from young lambs. So yeah, I question this idea of using extra dry cane for the making of reeds. This is all in German, I will skip. And there is a very interesting indication from Karl Almenreder, a bassoonist, in his message written in 1843, where he writes, the only test which has proven reliable besides mine outlined above is the fingernail test. Run the thumbnail over the bark of the cane, following its curvature, and observe whether with normal pressure any mark is impressed upon the cane. If none is left, you can be sure that the wood is too hard. And also many still reply that the hardest, most solid cane is most suited to the making of bassoon reeds. I will answer that if such reasoning were followed to its conclusion, apparently even better reeds could be made from wood that is harder and more solid than cane. Personally, I would rather make my reeds out of a piece of pine wood than use the hard cane, which some bassonists use. So you see that the idea to use hard cane is not new, is not only because of industrialization, but in the past it was not favored by great instrumentalists like Almenreder. And also we have a problem with industrial cane that it's all cut at the same time. Yes, and in France, Joseph Fröhlich treaty, he writes, for the bassoon, one should not take an overly mature and consequently too hard cane. The clarinet requires a firm cane. The oboe, a somewhat softer one. The bassoon, an even softer cane that is otherwise good and mature. I quote this citation to show you that in the past, people would really choose for each instrument the appropriate cane. So it's not possible to standardize. And so that's why since a few years I've been carrying different kind of studies on Arundodonats, study of the chemical and mechanical qualities of the plants, together with chemisters. This is a photo, microscopic photography, and also mechanical and rheological characterization. The idea is to find about the amount of viscoelasticity in the cane. Here you can see Jean-Marie Heinrich. Some of you might know him. He's famous for his work about bassoon reeds, and he's here together with the chemist Lila Cadet. In 2024, as a laureate of the French Ministry of Culture's call for projects, researchers in music, collaborations between young researchers and artists, I have held the exhibition Conversation with the Reeds at the Komitas Museum Institute in Yerevan. And this exhibition highlighted the close link between man and reeds from the Arax shores to the Mediterranean basin, and also with a focus on duduk reed making and oboe reed making. This is one view. There were two rooms, and this is one room where we exhibited also the work of Jean-Marie Heinrich on the right, and of a designer in Toulon, Antoine Boudin, who works with reed cane. And now I come just to talk briefly about the making of the reed. The lay or grattage has also greatly changed over the course of the 20th century, and so the quality of the cane affects the sound quality, but also the lay or grattage is very important for flexibility and quality of sound. Here you can see original reeds of the beginning of the 18th century that were found together with an oboe from Baptiste Desjardins. I've been able to visit the owner of this oboe in Bavaria, Albert Vosseler. It was a private collection, and I am very thankful to him because he trusted me. I could take the reeds and the oboe and bring it to the Paris Museum in Paris, and it has been acquired there, so it's available for further study. And I've just written an article, also thanks to David Gash, merci David, for the handbook of wind music that is going to be published by Oxford University Press, where I focus on the topic of historical double reed making and the importance of preserving and studying historical reeds. Here you can see a beautiful collection of reeds of the great French oboe schoolmasters. This was unique from Gillet to Bleuzet, all the great oboe players of the beginning of the 20th century. I have been able to see it once and then it's been lost. So just to also tell you that reeds are often neglected in collections and disappear, and this is a huge problem because we need to study the scrape, the shape, the dimensions to be able, as oboe players, to make copies of those reeds. And this is yes, very important to be able to know about the sound aesthetic of a certain period of time, and also to play the old instruments. Once you have reconstructed, you have the right cane, you have made the reed with the good proportions and the right grattage, etc. It's also very important to know how to adapt the finished reeds to historical oboes. So now I go back to like 17th and 18th century oboes. Here you can see from the oboe method from Garnier, very precise indications. I will not go into detail now, but just to tell that it's also important to know how to fit it in the instruments. Otherwise, you might have also not the result you expect. And once you have the right reed and it is inserted properly in the oboe, you can, if everything is right, you can check and use the historical oboe fingerings. This is very important because historical oboe fingerings is the only exact source we have. So we should really try to play ancient oboes with the fingerings written in the methods. That's the only indication we have that is absolutely clear and unmistakable. Here again from Garnier. I will finish with the sound quality that I personally aim for. Here is a quote from the Encyclopédie from 1765, written by Rousseau, Jean-Jacques Rousseau, and he writes, even if to describe sound quality, that even if an oboe is exactly in unison with the flute and softens its sound to the same degree, the sound of the flute will always have something soft and mellow, and that of the oboe something dry and sour, which will prevent them from ever being confused. And here we have now a major problem, is that oboe players don't want to sound dry and sour because it's not fashionable. And also, it's important to consider that if you play ancient oboe, you should have a bright tone. This is now from the Dictionary of Music from Jean-Jacques Rousseau, where he writes, by metaphor, this is the name, timbre is the name given to that quality of sound by which it is sour or sweet, dull or bright, dry or mellow. Sweet sounds are usually not very bright, like those of the flute and lute. Bright sounds are subject to sourness, like those of the vielle or the hautbois. So again, an indication, the hautbois used to sound bright, and to have a bright sound, you need a little amount of sourness, which means to have a sound full of high harmonics. Here you can see from Charles Parocel, Le Défilé Militaire in 1739, with what I would say call like Baroque oboes from Les Douze Grands Hautbois. You see that oboe players at court used to even play on horses with drums, and you can imagine from seeing this défilé how bright the sound might have been.
Sorry, Lola, sorry.
It's the end?
It is the end, yeah.
Yes,
really
I finished. Just finish by telling that we
1 minute, please.
1 minute, find a lot of indication about historical sound by listening to historical recordings, where the sound of the oboe and bassoon and clarinet is very different from nowadays. And we have good recordings from Georges Gillet, this great matter, as early as 1905. And another recording that I really like to study is from Fritz Fleming from 1926. And I will finish there. Thank you very much for your attention.